Welcome back, hunters. I'm the SurvivalVis, and I want to welcome you guys back to Monster Hunter World Iceborne and a little after the hunts review of AT Namielle. Now, since the last episode went up, which will actually just be earlier today, all things permitting, which was my first successful hunt, I've probably taken on AT Namielle 5 to 6 more times for her tickets for late armor and stuff like that. So I want to do a bit of a proper review of what I truly think of the fights with more experience as well as the first impressions. I have to say it is a very mixed bag leaning towards negative for me. I think I'll start off with saying how I'm kind of going to review her. Is most of the time you sort of have like a 0 to 10 scale, but I feel like that kind of throws things off because you want your middle ground to almost be like 5 out of 10. Instead, I'm probably going to go from -5 to +5, with 0 being a neutral. And we'll probably go off of a negative list and a positive list and kind of see where we are at the end of it, about how she kind of ranks on that. So we'll start at 0 out of 5, right in the middle of the screen, somewhere around now, and we'll go down the negative sign, which should be popping up about now too. So the first thing I have to give a negative to is her weird zone detonation, or her Nova. It operates in a bizarre fashion. If you actually pay attention, when Namielle does it, instead of spawning one big pool that goes out around her like a single, well, pool of liquid, it actually spawns a bunch of her smaller circles all around her. And this also does some really weird stuff with the existing puddles. Like, there have been 1 or 2 spots on my second hunt where you can see the pools almost spawn arbitrarily towards where you are from either existing pools or just randomly, like on the other side of that coral tree that one time. That's one of the reasons why I have to give a negative, is anything that is arbitrarily designed like that, where it's an immediate detonation or immediate consequence without much time to react, it's a negative. One that was done positive in that regards was Raging Brachydios, whereas you knew he kind of does the slime thing in his last zone, and it is arbitrary that they will spawn underneath you, but it's not like an instant detonation or extreme consequence. It's you see health loss and you know how to get out of that and be out of that. Actually, another issue I see I didn't include here, we'll get to that in a bit, but for now, that's one of my negatives is with her Nova. The next one is the null zone when you're a ranged weapon user with her. The hitbox on it is bizarre for what is negative and what's positive, and that could be either the hitboxes on Namielle herself or itself, or how the bowguns exactly work and function for where you aim with them. Like, if you've played light bowgun or heavy bowgun, you might have had these weird times where you're scoped right in for the monster, but instead you're shooting up to the top right or top left for some weird reason. It's almost, I think it's because the game almost has like a tracking system where it's going to shoot towards wherever your reticle was focused on at the time you pulled the trigger. So say if a monster's wing is moving out of the way, it's going to follow that wing to where it goes, instead of sticking firm and where you're aiming right at that moment. It's bizarre, but you can probably test that and see that a few times happen to you. It's frustrating. And it gets to be even more frustrating when you have a monster like Namielle, where it gets a null zone in her hitbox. I don't think there should ever be an absolute null zone on a monster where you're hitting for 0 damage, unless it's very temporary, such as when Kulftaroth does her Fury mode, or Safi'jiiva is in the middle of some sort of animation or something. Where it's not you're supposed to be hitting them, you're supposed to be taking in sort of the grandeur that the monster is, and that's a sign to let you do that. Having a constant null zone of 0, just a poor design choice. I would have instead very minimum damage, so you know, okay, that's not a good zone to aim at, but it doesn't mean it's completely absolute null for you, because that almost reduces the chance or possibility of you using a weapon type against her. Light bowguns, heavy bowguns, if that null zone is too impactful, what's the point of using that weapon? You basically ruled them out as being a potential for the players to try with. So that's their second negative point. The next one is the claw gating. This one sort of ties into her null zones, and you basically are forced to have to use the clutch claw to get parts of her tenderized, because the only weak spot she seems to have for gunning is her head. And that's a really bizarre target to go after on an Namielle, because think of it like you're trying to get towards somebody holding a fire hose, but you have to walk right in front of the person with the hose. You can't really go around the sides, left or right. You only have that head-on approach, and that's how Namielle is. Normal shots will work on her head, but you have to be very angled or you're hitting the null zone of her wings. You have to basically be straight down. Even with something, say, like spread ammo, it's super up close and try that. And if you want to try getting the wings, you actually have to get in and tenderize, which, if you're a light weapon user, you know the frustration of trying to use that dumb clutch claw in just situations like that. I think the best improvement they can make to Iceborne is to immediately make it so every weapon is a single hit tenderize. There you go. That should be how it is. The slinger ammo? Let's just have all weapons drop slinger ammo. I don't see why you needed to make this divide between them. Just give everybody the same base to work on, so that way everybody, no matter the weapon or the type, is just on equal footing and has equal opportunity to do things in a hunt. It's just a bizarre choice to split that and to have gating as a feature there. Now we're going to go back to her wonky Nova. You could sort of tie this in as a point to it, but I'm going to take it as a different point, where it's actually a double hit from it. Because if you pay attention to when she does her Nova, you'll actually get, if you're in her puddles when the electricity first courses through, you'll get a flinching stagger that does a chunk of HP off you. And then the Nova detonates and you get a second blast wave. I'm fine with getting the damage, but I don't think you should have been flinched out of the chance to do a super dive considering how that sort of operates. Here's a super powerful move that you know you have to respond and get out of, but we're going to reduce your ability to get out of that. That doesn't sound like you're trying to add to a challenge. That sounds like you're trying to BS in a way towards making it a challenge. That was my issue with the second thing there. Or just have it so that way you get a stagger and minor HP loss, and then the main detonation. I don't see why you have to almost... It's almost like a weird snap of the fingers in a way where it's like, you're doing fine. Actually, did that pick up? There we go, that probably picked up. And then snap, you're gone, you're dead. That's a card. I don't like the things like that, which also ties in my next point of her sliding around and being able to knock you down and flinch you with some damage loss. Pick one or the other, because that just is so frustrating to be up against when she just slides around and you're knocked over and you have to get up and your kind of momentum is entirely ruined. It's almost like a quake lock or a tremor lock in a way, which Monster Hunter does not do well with locking your character into animations and trying to keep that momentum of a good back and forth to it. You try that and you lose a lot of the potential fun you have in there. And then the next negative point, this one is more of like a mixed bag, where I'll probably have a point just like this for the positive, but it's how her zone changes are, and that they put her into very bad spots to actually fight Namielle. Like, the first zone you encounter her in is an okay one. It's not very large, I'd say it's probably an average size, so when she does the Nova or her zone detonation, you are in some tight quarters, but you still have a little bit of room to move. When she goes up to the tree, another area like that. It's little tight quarters, but you do have space to kind of move around and work your way through to set things up. My problem is the zone after that. I think it's area 10 on the map, where it's that little ravine almost, where she is larger than the actual zone almost, in a way. Like, she takes up half of the zone, and then her mantle takes up even more than that. My recommendation, as soon as she gets there, piss her off, and then run the hell back to the big wide open area zone where she is going to go to sleep. Because that is going to save you so much frustration of being in too tight an area to be able to get away from both the initial electric shock staggering you when she does the zone detonation, and then the actual detonation itself. I think that was a poor choice to throw in there just to... It's not even like test you, it's just more to frustrate you because it's something that just does not feel right to make a good, fair challenge against you for what you got. That wraps... Actually, is there one more? There was one I was talking about, the Nova... the Null Zone. I think that covers all of my negatives for it. I might have to rethink a little bit about what that last one was, but I think that's a good list out for what I see as the negatives towards her. Now we're going to go to the positive side of things that I do have to say I really liked about the fight. Now, number one is that the water attacks are strong and do a lot of damage. I think that's a very good sign of Namielle, is most of the time when you are fighting her before this Arch-Tempered form, her regular form, or her tempered, she doesn't feel like she impacts you that much. It's more like you are being sprayed down by a hose every now and then for the weaker versions. With an Arch-Tempered, they did the numbers very well with tuning her for the water damage of what you'll take. That's a positive I have to give, because it makes all of her attacks a little more thing to be wary of, and to approach with more caution. It's not something where it's a lot of BS where you feel like, I shouldn't have been hit by that. No, all of her fight mechanics are mostly well-tuned with their hitboxes, aside from what we talked about. Actually, I just remember that negative point. So I'll go back just a moment here, but the water attacks are good, which I'll give a positive. The negative I'm going to give is actually to her Nova detonation and the hitboxes on the Big Blast. I have had multiple times in a hunt. I'm not actually standing in the puddles. I'm not on the side of the puddles. But I still get detonated by it, and there's a car. One happens, I think, in the first video, where you see I'm up against the wall there. I'm not actually in any of the puddles, but it counts that I'm somewhere close enough that I'm in a hitbox. I've had other times in the hunt where I'm standing in the middle, there's no water under me. I have 2 feet to my left, 2 feet to my right, everything's going around me. I should be just fine. An outer shockwave that you can't even see a visual indicator of gets you. The hitboxes should have been much more refined to actually just being the pools on the ground. They aren't, and that's a negative I have to give, so I'll actually write that on my unedited version, so that way I can put this into there. So hitbox, boom. I'll refine that in editing. But then we're going, so that's negative fully done now. I thought I'd hit it, but now back to the positive. The next one is the zone changes. It's nice to fight her in a few variety of zones. Originally when you fight Namielle, or a lot of the times you fight her, she is mostly either in the big flat area just below the upper reaches in the highland, or right up in her nest area. Starting her down in the coral area more feels a lot more fitting considering her design, her colors. She just feels like a much better fit in those zones. And I have to say, the original initial zone, and then the zone where you fight her with the coral trees and the... what are they? The Raphanos? I think they're called the Raphanos, but all around there where usually Palumu likes to float around with them, those are good zones to fight her in. They have a little tighter quarters, so you have to be more careful, but they still keep you a nice bit of variety to what you're used to for fighting a Namielle. The only negative of the zone changes, as I mentioned, was the Area 10 one, which was just very, very bad. That is not a zone to fight anything large in, and I wish some of the maps had larger areas than the really tiny, confined spaces they have you try hunting stuff, because it doesn't even feel like the monsters would naturally fit or be present in those areas with how tight of quarters they are. Like, how do you explain Arathalos being in area... I want to say 5, but it might not be. But basically, right beside the camp of Area 11, I think it's Area 11, where you have all the tall trees around it, it can still kind of fly and dive through and keep flapping its wings in that area. How does it fit in there? It should be smacking itself against everything, but that was another positive, was that Namielle does go through a few different zones to kind of show off how she fits so well in the Coral Highlands. The next positive is how quickly she goes between her water state and her electricity state. This isn't the supernova, but this is where she starts crackling with energy and then begins triggering the small puddle blasts in a way. I really like that, because original Namielle, the fight feels very, almost cyclical in a way, where you fight her water enough, and then she gets angry, and then eventually you see the little crackle of energy, and then the fight changes to that, and then she does the Nova, and then pieces out. Here it's a lot different, where she mixes the water and the electricity much more frequently, so it keeps you on your toes very often. I do like how it's not as cyclical. It's kind of hard to predict when she'll do her electricity or when she'll do a water blast. It adds that little bit of unpredictability, so you don't know what you're in store for, but you have to be ready for it. That keeps a hunter on their toes and is a good choice to keep for an Arch-Tempered, where it keeps you a little more wary and a little more cautious that you should be for fighting such a powerful creature. The next one I have to give positive to is the new sort of nest she uses, where when you finally do overcome the hurdle that has been so much of her HP and all of her zone detonations, she sleeps in an area where you can't just wall-shot her into something. I like that a lot, because a lot of the wall flinching can feel cheap in the game, where it's just, oh, okay, we can get another flinch in, let's do that immediately. Smack, smack, into a wall. Here in the last zone, it feels like a more drawn out and more intense fight in a way because you haven't had that luxury that you used to be able to just rely on so heavily. It makes it really come feeling down to the wire in a way that when you actually do it, you have a huge sigh of relief. We actually did it. Oh my god, thank goodness. And that's what I really like about an Arch-Tempered, and even my second video where I finally say oh thank god we did it. I do like that feeling where it's been such a battle, you feel yourself wearing out and thin, and you're down to your last legs and the monster's own legs, and then it's just that triumph of who was superior in this matchup. That is a great feeling to have. So I do have to applaud them for giving her the new nest where you can't just wall-shot her into something. Lastly, I'm going to give a point to the armor skills. I love when they give it more of a utility, fun, just a different take than just raw damage up increase like, say, Raging Brachydios had. Where instead she has all these evasion points and stamina points, so you can try out a bunch of different builds a little more easily. You want to fit in a full evasion 5, here's a 4 in a single armor piece that you can squeeze into different sets and see how that does, or if you like to be an evade gunner like myself, this gives you a chance to try having the mighty skill included in there. So that way your stamina is actually increasing at such a rate that even if you do have to evade load, you get that as a perk anyway. And even Namielle's own set bonus, the free element or the... what is it? Free element or... ammo up, or is it load up? Something like that, but where if you do enough attacks in a certain period of time, or so many attacks eventually will trigger it, so you're getting release level 3. With the Raging Brachydios bowgun, I don't have to try running release 3 in my build. I can just use the Namielle set, and it'll kind of automatically give me that. And I like that in a way, because it shifts what my priority can be. When I have it active, I can feel like I'm more on the offensive using it, and then once it wears off, I can slide to more defensive, and just wait till that kind of builds up on its own again. It's just a nice little back and forth that the set, it doesn't worry about how much damage you do, it's more just about what utility can you provide, what twists can you spin into things. So that is basically my cover-up, or, well, not my cover-up, but my go-over and review of how I feel for her fight. So if we add everything up here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points to the negative versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the positive. So the outcome is a -2 out of 5. And the thing is, a lot of these negatives are just small design choices that can be fairly easily improved on, I would say. Change things like the hitboxes of her big detonation to actually be visually indicated by the pools that are on the ground. When she does her big supernova, instead of spawning these multiple small pools off of existing and previous ones, have a large pool that is just a uniform circle that goes around, and then anything it's touching, those go off as well. Not this weird random arbitrary pools will spawn out of existing ones, even though they don't actually touch where she's putting the new ones down in. Have other ones where, like, get rid of the null zone, make it just a less damaging zone, but you still have some sign that it's not a complete waste if you accidentally hit that. Small design choices that, when added together, come up to be big problems, but if solved, can make the fight so much different. So I'm hoping for more future Arch-Tempereds is there's a little more care put into them, just to kind of improve on those small things. Because the large things, like increasing the damage of certain attacks, changing up the zones you fight them in, different nested things, or how many variations, or how quickly they switch between what attacks they use, they can drastically change up a fight to be almost unrecognizable from their base fights. So that's kind of my take on Arch-Tempered Namielle. She is my favorite monster, but the Arch-Tempered fight does have a number of issues to her that should definitely be improved upon. This is just a little bonus episode to cover those. Maybe I'll do another hunt of Arch-Tempered Namielle, just kind of show you my recommendation for how to hunt her. PSA or big tip for you guys if you are thinking of light bow gunning: very long distance elemental rapid fire sniping. Don't even get close to her. You get close, you're going to be hitting those weird hitboxes with her lightning attacks, and just, you're not going to have a good time. But this will conclude our little after the hunt talk for Arch-Tempered Namielle. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode of monsterhunterworld Iceborne. I hope you guys are having better luck than I had for my first 2 hunts against her. And remember to just try to be patient and think a little bit more utility and outside the box than you might, in case you're having frustration with her. She is very tough, and a lot of it, I think, comes down more to bad design choices than the actual fight itself being challenging. Until I see you all in the next episode, though, hunters and survivors alike, please remember to take care and stay alive.